do your absolute best to desist from trying to explain yourself to people who cannot possibly understand what it is you're experiencing. Hello, Swami Bhaktananda Ji. Okay. Oh. Okay. Happy Monday. Welcome to Satsang. We had talked about doing with Satsang this morning on Ho'oponopono. And so we'll see. But what's alive now is, it seems that with many of our sangha, well, couple anyway, me included, Yogananda's been very alive, sort of in the hearts and on the minds of many of us. And as I was tuning in, I thought I'd tell one of my favorite Yogananda stories. Swami Bhaktananda Ji, who's here with us, Swamiji, gave me a CD, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, with all these different stories by Yogananda in his own voice. And there's one I haven't forgotten. And it's one I always like to bring out to people when they're afraid that they're losing their mind as they're awakening. Am I going insane? I remember one time early after a very strong mystical experience, I was driving from Washington, D.C. to Asheville, North Carolina, and I really wasn't sure if I had entered into some psychological trouble, and I thought I was going crazy. And I remember having to pull off the highway rather urgently so that I could Google on my phone, spiritual awakening versus psychosis. And so it's quite common, I find, with people who come to be concerned about their mental health. Because the truth is, when we detach from the insanity of the world, which we called reality, it seems like we're losing our minds. And I always like to say, insane looks insane if you're insane. All you have to do is turn on the news or read the newspaper or log into Facebook, and you'll know what the world has to offer. And if you call that sanity, then you probably wouldn't be here today. So the story with Yogananda is that he boards a plane at Los Angeles, and sitting across from him, he says, is a famous Hollywood actor. He doesn't say who. And Yogananda is a beautiful man, very effeminate, and long hair and robes. And in this time in America, this still is, but in this time it was very unusual. And so he got this full look of disdain. So Yogananda says, "Sir, what's wrong with your face?" And the actor says, "My face is none of your business." And Yogananda says, "Well, here I have to disagree with you because I have to look at it this entire flight." And so they both start laughing. And Yogananda says, "You see, we're all a little crazy in this world. But I know your kind of crazy, but you do not know mine." He says, "So let us talk on this flight. And if by the end of our flight you have persuaded me to your way of thinking, I will also become a movie actor. And if I persuade you, you will become my student." And he says, "I'm happy to report I have not had to become a movie actor." I think the Cheshire Cat says something similar. Yes, I'm crazy. I'm just a different kind of crazy than you're crazy. Okay. So, who has something?
So I've this Christmas season, for a time, there's this saying of love brings up its opposite. Like for a time that's meant to be so much love, like all the discord and family systems always gets amplified. For me personally, I've been, well, historically, but in an amplified way recently, been dealing a lot with tensions in my relationship with my mum. And I've been messaging Nataraj about it, and he sent me this book by Richard Rohr called Falling Upwards. And in the book, he references this line that Jesus says in the Gospels, in the Gospel of Luke, about whoever, I'm paraphrasing here, but whoever does not hate mother and father, brother and sister, whoever does not take up his cross cannot follow me. And just been both pondering and lamenting the necessity of severing all sort of special attachments, not necessarily externally, but internally, grappling with that whole process. It also is reflecting a process of deep challenge with my relationship with my mom externally as well, where she is sort of unable to understand or accept this, I guess, spiritual journey or awakening that I've been on, and has been sort of questioning and challenging and invalidating it every step of the way, which has recently culminated, in me deciding that I need to take a bit of space from my mom in our relationship. And I had that conversation with her a few nights ago, which went really poorly, because no matter what I said, she took it as, like, from my perspective, I felt quite tender and in pain, but at peace that this had to be done. And no matter what I said, she couldn't see that I had love and gratitude for her. All she saw in my eyes, she said, was hate and resentment. And she couldn't understand. And no matter what I said, she kept, like, in a roundabout way. Anyway, I don't want to keep going on and on, but you get the point. So yes. For me, the most difficult part of this is that I can see her perspective, and I know where she's coming from, and I know why she's viewing me the way she's viewing me. And I can't do anything about it, Like, it causes me pain to cause her pain. I don't want to cause her pain, but there's nothing I can do about it, So just navigating that whole thing.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Would you Google for me Gospel of Thomas? I think it's 54 or 55. So, let's just say that awakening is a tricky business. Can we say that awakening is detachment? And attachment is suffering. And the process of detachment is painful and awkward, messy. Can be, is frequently, I think. The attachment is clinging, isn't it? It's clinging, it's wanting things not to change. It's being rooted in familiar, which is to be rooted in past, memory. This is attachment, this is suffering. And for us, even as seekers, when one comes to the intersection and begins to seek something different than what the world has been offering, detachment is still difficult. Clinging persists. Memory is still binding somehow. hard for us, but we're moving toward detachment as a way to become free. But for the ones who love us, it's trickier still. And many times they haven't had the breakthrough, the revelation, the taste of the nectar of detachment. And so it's very difficult for them too. It's a tricky business. Because as you say, I am awakening, I am detaching, and I don't want to hurt anyone. I have compassion, I have love, but I'm not changing course. It's really tricky. It's very tricky with family. Very, very enmeshed with parents. And children. Very enmeshed. Beautifully enmeshed, but also very difficult, isn't it? Detachment is hard enough for us, and we feel as we're detaching, something arises quite frequently that feels somewhat aloof. You're no longer interested in the things that used to engage you, impassion you, falling away. And you think, wow, is something wrong? I seem so callous and aloof. This is just what it feels like. When the patterns of attachment are revealed to us, we see that it doesn't work. And so even eventually we'll just lose interest. Even young people that I talk to, they're no longer interested in going out with their friends to bars. I mean, it presents differently in each person. And so one can wonder, am I becoming hardened, calloused? But you see, the only one that really wonders that is the lingering sense of the identity that's still attached in the familiar. Because when detachment is complete, this is vairagya, uncolored, meaning you're no longer painting, superimposing your past on the present moment, no longer superimposing the memory of your family members, the memory of them on on the present moment. No longer really driven by resentments and nostalgias, free of it. But the process of getting there, of the process of untethering, of detaching, can be difficult. And from the perspective of our families, it's very difficult for them. Because you see them and you love them. You're rejecting who you were. It's called growth, evolution. This is what we're supposed to be doing. So we're rejecting, as part of detachment, you could say we're rejecting past identities. And it's very common that they would perceive that we are rejecting them. No, not at all. We're rejecting the patterns of interaction that keep me bound in identity that I no longer identify with. Does that make sense? So, and as you say, there is no way, it seems, to convey this so that it can be heard by the ears of the one you're speaking to. For a moment, just a moment, to speak personally. So many times I tried to explain what was happening to me, which was beautiful and exciting and scary and painful. If only to alleviate the concerns of the ones who love me. And I began to notice every time I tried, it made them more concerned. That every time I tried to explain what was happening to me, all they heard was crazy, because they had no context. Because what you're experiencing as detachment, they see as irresponsible. They feel it as rejection. And they see it as disloyal and irresponsible. It's the opposite, of course. It's such a tricky business. Would you read us the quote from Gospel of Thomas?
Verse 55. Whoever does not hate his father and his mother cannot become a disciple to me. And whoever does not hate his brothers and sisters and take up his cross in my way will not be worthy of me.
It's pretty intense. I don't know. I wonder if hate is the exact translation or... But I know the connotation that most have of the word hate isn't what Jesus is saying. Or maybe he uses such a strong word to sort of give us pause, to make us pay close attention. Have you begun to notice in your own awakening experience that every word means something slightly different to every set of ears? Have you noticed that many times the words and the way you deploy them is changing? You see, because the world knows hate as the opposite of love, doesn't it? That love and hate are opposed to each other. But you will and are coming to know a love that has no opposition. It has no opposite. You'll come to know that any love that could be hate was never love. And so maybe this word is used to invite us into a deep and powerful contemplation of what is love and what is hate. Because love is not a transaction. It is not a quid pro quo. It is not codependent. It doesn't require trust or loyalty or responsibility or accountability. None of these things. The love that is love has no color to it, no condition set on it, nothing superimposed on it. This is called vairagya, or dispassion, or equanimity, agape, peace, truth, existence, knowledge, as in knowingness, and bliss, anand. And so we could say that this hate is of a love that is not that. A love that is special. More here, less there. More if this, less if that. This love is the currency of the world. And, okay, it's not our job to fix the world. It's our job to detach from these patterns of a transactional kind of a love. Just as a matter of a practical suggestion based on my own experience. Do your absolute best to desist from trying to explain yourself to people who cannot possibly understand what it is you're experiencing. Do your best to not apologize for the transformation that's happening to you. Do your best to maintain a deep and loving compassion for people who are feeling, are not actually, but are feeling rejected. So often we can find that as we're journeying into something deeper and more profound, that we're still looking to the past for validation. Looking to the people who knew us, knew where we've been, but don't know where we're going, don't really even know where we are, and looking to them for affirmation. It's a bit like asking for a hug from somebody without any arms. It's just not nice. But the habit is so strong in us to need validation, to want to be loved and accepted and encouraged. But we need to know where to go for that. It has to be from somebody who's been where we are and went where we're going. Has to be. Who else could provide legitimate affirmation? And we're so wired, especially with our parents, with our family, mother, father, brother, sister, even children, especially, well, even children. Every time I tried to explain myself, it made them sometimes angrier, sometimes more concerned. And as we venture out, it can still be so uncomfortable to be misunderstood by the people that we love and the people that love us. Sometimes the opposition doesn't end. The ones who are supposed to love and support you simply cannot, because they don't understand where you're going. Can you go anyway? Right? I know with so many of you, it's spouses and children and parents. Every one of you I'm looking, every single one of you I know for a fact. And me too, still opposition. I was lectured last week. Swami Shivananda says, detach, attach. Detach from the world, attach to God. Detach from the earthly parents and attach to the divine Father and Mother. When we attach to divine Mother, to divine Father, slowly it can happen where you'll see that moving through your earthly parents, and how it becomes distorted as it moves through the particular person, the veneer of personality, of conditioning. And you'll see how the pure divine is distorted coming through them. But still, in its distortion, you can love it. I'll share this. A few years ago, I was asked to spend a few months taking care of my parents. And so I went. There was some surgery and another surgery, and COVID was happening. And I was cooking and cleaning and getting my father dressed, all of these beautiful things to do. And one time I remember I was at the stove and I was making lunch for them both. And something came through my mother. That was her conditioning. It wasn't entirely kind as I was busy loving and serving them. And I'd just come from Shivananda ashram and was in a almost constant dialogue with Swami Shivananda. So I turned to him and I said, Swamiji, really? And he said rather tersely, bare insult, bare injury, highest sadhana. Ugh, I know, I get it. And then without words, he reminded me that there was nothing happening here but the Divine Mother. And that if I peered past the veneer of my mother, I would see and perceive and feel the mother. And that if I received, almost like focus my attention behind the veneer, behind the person I call mom, to Divine Mother, cooking for that one, serving that one, being loved in return by that one. And that what was in between was just the thinnest of facades that was the conditioning of mom. And so standing there at the stove, I was awash in bliss because I just looked 6 inches past my mother, my mom, to the mother. Detach, attach. Wouldn't it be nice if it were all, that was the end of it? No. The disapproval continues. Sometimes, and sometimes great praise and appreciation. So, the most powerful method of detachment, in my experience, is forgiveness. We talked about this in Satsang recently, that forgiveness is ego death. Ego death is freedom. forgiveness is freedom. And of the practices of forgiveness, the one that has absolutely changed my life is called Ho'oponopono. I'd had some success with forgiveness before Ho'oponopono, and it was a very simple practice, and it was pray for somebody you resent for 2 weeks. Every day, 3 times a day. And do it sincerely, meaning honestly. So the first day, the prayer might start, I hope that jerk gets what he deserves. Amen. And at the end of the first week, I hope he gets the happiness he's seeking. Lord, I hope he comes to find the peace and joy that we all deserve as our birthright. And then you can go looking for the resentment and not be able to find it. Some forgiveness is a little bit trickier, especially when it involves nuclear family, parents, siblings. Might be a little more than a couple weeks and a deeper exploration, because generally this goes to the root of our traumas of lifetimes. The arc of the soul and the karmic debts, the boons, the papa and punya, they're in the parental relationship. So the real work is here. Forgiveness of parents, detachment from parents. Swami Shivananda also says, was in Satsang some years ago, said it as if he was speaking directly to me because it was the very thing I was contemplating. He said, you have had so many parents. You've been married so many times in so many lifetimes, and you've had so many children. Make this life for freedom. Make this life for God. What an outrageous thing to say. Just like Jesus, outrageous. And doesn't it say, love thy mother and father? And this is also true. True in a way in the early phases of life. Also true in a pure way in the later phases of life, where the love is unconditional. That this love is really the fruit of acceptance, of non-judgment, Acceptance, the fruit of forgiveness. I don't need you to be anything different than you are. I don't need you to be the same tomorrow as you are today. And I don't need you to think of me in any way at all. My sense of self is completely independent. This is freedom. For the one who can say this in a peace and love this is freedom. So many years ago, I drove up to Annapolis from Washington, D.C. for some kind of a 3-day, 2-day spiritual retreat. I was new to spirituality and was so eager to try and find people who did this sort of a thing. For me, I was kind of catapulted into spirituality. Didn't seem like by choice. And I was eager to find out if, well, like I said, if I was going crazy. So I started going to things like this. And there, at one part of the retreat, they paired us off in order to do forgiveness work together. And I was paired off with Alethea, who's here with us today. Well, first, just before this, there were 2 lines, kind of like a sort of a dance. But you'd eye gaze with somebody, and then you'd love them and say whatever came to be said, and then you'd move on, if I remember it correctly. And then I came right across from Alethea, and we both ran toward each other and embraced. And nothing like this had ever happened in my life, and I was kind of horrified, if I'm telling the truth. But there it was just an impulse, and I did it. Like a long-lost sister, I don't know. And then later that day, they paired us up for this forgiveness practice, Ho'oponopono. And Ho'oponopono goes, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. I said, I'm sorry, and I collapsed to my knees and wept like a little boy. And the part of me that was aware of this was horrified. So I don't know. But I just know it's a very powerful prayer. Then, sometime later, I came across it again. And I heard the story of Dr. Hugh Lin. Many of you probably know it. Many of you may have heard it from me. As I recall, you'll have to check the details for yourself, but as I recall, Dr. Hugh Lin was a psychiatrist in Hawaii, let's say Honolulu. He was the grandson of a Polynesian shaman. There was a mental institution run by the government that was in a lot of trouble politically and financially, and no psychiatrist worth their salt wanted to touch it. So the governor asked Dr. Len, won't you please come run this hospital for me? And he agreed on the condition that he'd run it the way he saw fit and didn't want interference and wanted the governor to provide cover for him politically while he did what he did. So, pretty savvy. The story goes that he asked for all the files to be delivered to his office of all of the patients. And he would sit with the files and read through them. And he would do this prayer, Ho'oponopono. Reading, tuning into the energy of the patient, And as representative, he would say, I'm sorry. As representative, he would say, please forgive me. This I'm sorry comes with the full understanding of the pathology, the experience of each patient, and a deep, wide open heart to hold the space. I'm so sorry you went through all of this. And a personal and impersonal representative, I'm sorry. Please forgive me as representative. Thank you. Thank you means it's done. It's been done. I said, please forgive me. You have forgiven me, so now I say thank you. I have received the forgiveness. I love you. I love you is the fruit of forgiveness. And when spoken in this way, that is the love that is agape, unconditional, there's a sweetness on the tongue. And there's a depth in the heart. When you say it in a certain way, feel it in a certain way, you will know that this is the consummation of forgiveness. That it's done. And it will take so many repetitions. So he does this, and then it's revealed he never once meets with any of the patients in person. And within 3 years, let's say, they're all discharged, every last one. So when I heard this story, I thought that's absurd, it's not possible. And my first instinct was to discard it. But something said, hold on, because skeptical, fine. Cynical even, fine. But if I walk away from this and don't try it, I'm an idiot. Because I saw, if it's true that he never met with any of them, never once, and simply did this prayer, never spoke any of these words to them individually, and still somehow they were healed, presumably some part of him was healed as well. I had to know. I couldn't just scoff at it and walk away, because if it's true what they said, it changes everything. And I have no idea how the world works. I was certain of this in this moment. If this story of Dr. Hugh Lin is true, and he simply prayed this prayer, and they were healed, then I don't know anything about anything. And this is something I have to know. And so I started doing it. And sometimes for me, Ho'oponopono was stale and empty, just kind of going through the motions. And sometimes my heart would break, Sometimes there'd be tears. And I started to see little shifts. And I was careful to do the experiments. I'd never spoke a word of apology to anyone in person, not related to this Ho'oponopono. And I began to see little sort of clues that this was working. So I doubled down. And I started doing it 3 times a day. And always, specific to a particular individual where there was some conflict or some lingering resentment, some conversation still happening in the head, some heaviness in the heart. And then something really incredible happened. It was like the prayer somehow came alive for me, became an intelligence. I experienced this intelligence as a goddess of mercy. And the prayer itself, she began to teach me how to pray Ho'oponopono. And this is what she taught me. She said, you sit still. Imagine the person with whom there's conflict, judgment, resentment. And you say in your mind, in your heart, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I've done. I'm sorry for what I haven't done. I'm sorry for judging you for what you've done. And she says, you say it to the person in your mind, and then you look up above the person to their higher self, oversoul, and you say, please forgive me. She said, this is important because the person may not be able to forgive you. So you have to go to the higher authority. Them, but the higher version of them. And so, please forgive me. And then she said, now you have to relax your shoulders and open your heart and your chest. And now you have to receive the forgiveness. This is not easy to do. And she says, you've asked for it. Now you must receive it. And so you feel it. You feel the forgiveness. Awash in it. Having received it, you acknowledge receipt by saying thank you. And you say it to the person. Thank you to the person. And I love you to the person. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Would you please forgive me? Thank you. I love you. Now she says, not finished. Now you switch. And the person now says to you, I'm sorry. And you imagine this. They say to you, I'm sorry. And you feel all of the things, the whole resentment, all of the things, how you've been wronged, how you've been misunderstood, how you've been neglected and abused. And you hear them say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And they say to you, please forgive me. Now you cannot go to the oversoul. You've got to do it from and through your person. You offer the forgiveness. It's been asked, now you give it. I forgive you. And you mean it as much as you possibly can in that moment. But to do it is most important. To the extent that you mean it, good. You'll notice sometimes we're holding a little bit back. It's okay. Just do it to the extent that you can. And now you have to witness as they're receiving the forgiveness that you are giving. Their heart is open. Receiving forgiveness that you are giving. And now you hear them say, I love you, to you. Okay? So, they say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. You, the person, forgives. You see them receive the forgiveness that you are giving, and then they say, I love you, and you receive that love. Okay? She says, still not finished. Now, she says, the two of you hold hands and stand in your own heart, in my heart. I hold hands with the other. The two of us are standing together in my heart. And we look up like this, together in unison. We say, we're so sorry. We just didn't know. We didn't understand. Won't you please forgive us? And then the two of us, we receive it. Receiving the full forgiveness of God. And our hearts lifted up. We say together, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you, love you, love you. Three ways. Giving, receiving, giving, receiving, giving, receiving. Same. Now, some moments, like I say, this was stale. Some moments were so profound. So much pain and trauma was revealed and released. And here's the thing. It called into question for me, in my own direct experience, it called into question for me legitimately the nature of reality. Because in forgiveness, it seemed entirely possible that I had undergone a total dimensional shift and that the world was a very different place. And in the consummation of forgiveness, without having ever spoken a word or exchanged any kind of anything in person with somebody, they could show up as completely different. My jaw dropped several times at the love and affection that people showed to me where there was hatred and there was not even the slightest lingering sense of that conflict. It blew my mind. it's so profound for me, this prayer. And I've suggested it so many times, especially when people come and they're having some issue and conflict and they tell me about it. And I tell them this story and I suggest that maybe they would like to try it. But I'll tell you, so few people do it for more than a few days. This is a key that will unlock so many doors for you. But like anything, we have to do it. A couple of things that I'd like to share with you that I noticed. By forgiving, when that concluding "I love you" is dripping and open, you will be forgiven. In truth, you'll come to realize that you were already forgiven, that the forgiveness was yours before even the offense, and that forgiveness was never necessary. But it's necessary for us. So, first there's this. Then, I'll say it this way. It seems to, in that completion that results in total love, total acceptance, total peace, which, by the way, doesn't mean that now all of a sudden you're best friends, all chummy. It could mean you never speak to them or see them again. You don't know. It's not the reason we do it anyway. But anyway, so something can happen. It's like it opens a door for the other soul, the other personality, in an agreement with their own soul, to step through that door of forgiveness that you've opened. But it's their choice, and they may not step through. But for you, you will have been forgiven. You will have been healed. And from this place of equanimity, you won't really mind what choice they make. You can have a slight preference, I think. We all would, that love is expressed, manifest. But it doesn't always happen this way. The important thing is that you walk through the portal of forgiveness and that you've opened the door for somebody else that they can choose to walk through or not. You don't pull them through. This is very important. And also it can happen that they'll come through and then go back. They'll come through and then they'll go back. Because the past is such a strong magnet, isn't it? It's true for us also. But you go through and you don't go back. I think with this prayer alone can take anyone who engages with it all the way. But like we talked about recently, forgiveness is so hard. Because it is a death to the identity of the judge. It is the death of the identity of the victim. Are you willing to be victimless? And also, it is the death to the impulse to take advantage. And when it becomes true in a way that is also honest, that the honest experience is also the truth of it, it's the end of karma. It's the end of being tossed about in cause and effect, time and space. Is it too outrageous to say? Is this the forgiveness that we're forced to do on the playground in first grade? No. No, this is a dimension shifter. This is the difference between hell and heaven. On earth, in your own heart. But who would dare to do it? Because I think I put it this way last time. It's a suicide mission. It's a kamikaze for the identity, for the ego, for the conditioning. It'll take you right to the edge of yourself. It's terrifying. But this prayer and this way that I was led through it, that I now share with you, is so powerful. See for yourself. 3 times a day. And maybe one day you'll go looking for the one who suffered and can't find him. I asked this question recently. How long is the list of unforgivable in the heart of the one who suffers? We all know the crazy of the world. Time to know a different crazy. Hmm. Oh. It's such a sweet moment, this. I'm feeling the tenderness in so many of your hearts right now, as if it's my own, and feels like a real blessing. Love you so very much. You know, the tears that come, I think, are the strongest modality of healing. We can offer them to ourself, our wounds. We can offer them to the wounds of others. We can offer them to God. In puja, it's called abhishekam. In surrender, it's called tears. This is your great offering. And I can't say I understand it, but there's something very powerful to never wipe a tear from your face. Not to be polite, not to indulge your sense of embarrassment. Never wipe a tear from your face. And as tears come down our cheeks, we can imagine them coming down inside of us also. We can imagine them coming down the inside of our cheeks, down our throat and into our heart. These tears are an offering to the indwelling God, Abhishekam. In the heart, just even one will begin to do its work. so much.